Good evening. I'd like to call the Anacortes City Council meeting of September 6th, 2022 to order. Mr. Francia, could you take the roll, please?
Mr. Carter.
Present.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Walters. Ms. Cleland McGrath. Ms. Moulton.
Here.
Mr. McDougall. Ms. Hubick.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the good news is we have a quorum. We'll see if Ms. Cleland McGrath can at least chime in at some point, and we're expecting Mr. McDougall to come in a little late. Would you all please join me in the pledge? All right, it looks like we got Ms. Cleland to be able to communicate with council. Is that correct? All right, well, we'll see. Looks like she managed to, looks like got the mute off. All right, well, anyway, we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is announcements and committee reports. I'll start with just a quick reminder to the public that school has started in Anacortes. So again, please be careful as the kiddos are returning to school. Anacortes Police Department, while we like to say emphasis patrols, they're always out patrolling, but certainly they're keeping an eye on school zones and making sure we're being careful with the additional pedestrian traffic. So please look out. The next report, we're going to have a presentation about the Tommy Thompson Trestle fire update, but just like to start out, I know we were all sad to hear the news about the trestle, and we got the picture there. But I'd like to thank the many members of the community that reached out to me. I'm sure some of them reached out to you on council, offering to support. And again, much like we did in 2009, the community will rally and will quickly restore it as soon as possible. But with that, I will turn it over for a report from Chief Harris and then Mr. Lunsford. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public.
Make sure you're with the microphone on and a little bit closer with the blue light.
Can do. Better?
Yeah,
All right.
better. Thank you.
All right. So tonight we're just going to talk a little bit about the response to the fire at the Tommy Thompson Trestle, kind of what happened that night, what's happening now, and what's planned for the future. So shortly after about 1:45 in the morning, an employee at the refinery, I think through a security camera, had seen flames out on the trestle and called 911. It was initially dispatched as a Fire District 13 call because of the Marches Point address that was given, but they pretty quickly realized that it was bigger than that and dispatched Anacortes units as well. Pretty quickly, so Anacortes stations 1 and 2, as well as District 13 responded, and PD crews. The initial crews, it was right in the center of the trestle. Crews had to stretch about 1,200 foot of hose from the east end and about 800 foot from the west end to get lines out to where the fire was. Once that was done, they were able to get most of the fire knocked down in about 15 to 20 minutes. And then thankfully the Swinomish and Marathon boats were able to respond as well, because the crews from the top weren't able to get water streams underneath. So the main members were still burning, but the boats were able to put that out. There were crews on scene for about 12 hours, but a lot of that was just mop up, some investigation things. Really by about 7:30 in the morning, most of the crews had cleared and gone back to quarters. Fortunately, about 77 foot linear feet of the trestle was destroyed. What you see there, really all the decking in that area is gone. There's a little bit of it was the Trex type decking. Most of it was lumber, completely burned away. Pretty much nothing you're looking at in that photo is the actual deck itself. That's all the first layer of supports underneath. You can also see quite a fair bit of damage into the vertical supports and I don't know what the right term is, but the lengthwise larger supports down below. It'll be a while before we know how much of that has to be replaced and how deep it's going to be into that. I know that a big question, and I get it everywhere I pull up in my car. People are asking what happened, who started the fire, how did the fire start? And I'm certain that many of you and the public want to know that as well. Unfortunately, it's still an open investigation and those things really can't be discussed in this forum. But we do encourage the public, if they have any information or anything they may feel helpful, there's an anonymous number there, the 360-299-1985, where tips can be left, or if there's something more urgent, 911 can of course always be called, and you can be put through to the Anacortes Police Department.
Maybe.
Actually, with that, I'm going to turn over that's what's happened that night. I'll answer some questions after the fact if anybody has any. Mr. Lunford's going to take over and talk about what's going on with the trail today, and then where we're headed the next few months.
Yeah, and I'll open it. I'll let you all finish, and then I know council will have some questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Harris, Mayor, Council, ladies and gentlemen. So where we're at now is the trail is closed indefinitely from the RV park to the March Point connection. And the reason for that is the active investigation going on, and we've yet to do an investigation of the structure and how sound it is and what we need to be looking at for repairs. So our intention is to do that as soon as we can. So we've asked the public, the public wants to get out and see, we understand that, but it's not safe to do so. So we've, as the mayor said, we've seen the community rally in the past, and we're looking forward to that again. So we recognize the value of the trail. People use it all the time for recreation, for commuting, for enjoying nature and the beauty of Fidalgo Island. People also do survey and research out there, heron studies, etc. We've been contacted by several groups, and we just can't let anyone out to continue their work. So we're currently assessing the damage and repair needs, and we ask for folks who are, even though we don't know the cost, we don't know the extent of the damage, people have reached out. So we would like to know what we're asking them to do, but if folks would like to give, the Anacortes Parks Foundation has generously opened up their front page. And if folks want to go to that, it's anacortesparksfoundation.org, and they have their main story there. And you can donate at the bottom of that story as to for this, and just show that it's for the trestle recovery. So they came through last time with $290,000 from the community, which is extremely impressive. That was about 464 linear feet that burned. We're dealing with 77, but again, we don't know the extent, the depth of the fire. Last time we had to cut pilings and rebuild from above. We don't know if the pilings are something we can build upon, or if we have to do the same thing. So all those kinds of investigations have to go on currently. So, and I just want to echo what the chief said and thank our first responders, thank the police units that responded, fire units that responded, the private industry, the sovereign nations of Samish, Swinomish that responded, and our own street department helped to close it all down and make it safe so the public couldn't get out there in the early morning hours last Tuesday. So, Mayor, if you want to lead this, we'll just stand back and answer any questions we can.
Yeah, and again, if thanks to the quick response, I couldn't remember the exact number. The 2009. Those of us who are around probably remember that it burned for a significantly long period of time. So the response minimized the damage. So again, I can't thank the first responders enough. Mr. Young, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I had just moved here when that fire in 2009 came along, and part of that was what led me to get involved. And but my question, I've got two questions. First of all, is that 360-299-1985, is that anonymous tips for this project, or is that just an anonymous tip line?
We've got our police chief here
Okay.
just in case.
Yeah. Oh,
My
okay.
answer is going to be, I don't know the answer to that question. but-
We got. Go ahead, Chief Floyd.
Yes, that's correct. That is the anonymous tip line that goes to our investigations division.
Got it.
So they would field those tips and then they would be assigned out appropriately between our detectives and patrol division to follow up on.
Perfect, Chief. I was just trying to, just sort of be clear so that, we can let the community know, even on anything else, that is an anonymous tips line, and that could be very helpful. I know that so much is unknown at this point, and I know that we're deliberately sort of waiting for the investigations to continue before we lead to anything else or say anything else. My question was, there was an email I think came out from a constituent about their concern about how do they travel from on bike travel from around 20. Is there anything that we might be able to do at later point to just sort of wall off or make it a little safer for them? And I know that this is still so much ahead of the game right now and so much down the road, but I was just wanting to make sure that was on the radar. And are we giving any thought to it? And that could be a yes or a no question answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. So the answer is yes, we're giving thought to, or working with our partners at WashDOT to try to understand that. But right, obviously our focus is on the investigation and the structural stability, et cetera, of the trestle. But yes, our public works is in conversation with WashDOT.
All right, any other, and again, for anybody who wants to call the tip line, reminder of the date, the 30th, the morning of the 30th at approximately 01:45. Is that, so to help narrow the time.
Mayor
Ms.
Miller,
Moulton.
thank you. Thank you for the presentation and thank you to the various departments for all your work on this. This is a community treasure. Obviously, it affects so many of us. One thing I'd like to caution is that I know that there are some bicyclists who feel that it's safer for them to ride east on Fidalgo Bay Road and then ride against traffic on Highway 20 to South Marches Point Road. It's a 3/4 of a mile distance. But I just would like to remind people that I don't even know what the speed limit is there, but people go 50 plus. And it's very hazardous and dangerous to ride against traffic. As bicycles, we are vehicles. And not only it's just unsafe. It's unsafe for bicyclists. If you run into, anyway, it's unsafe for a number of reasons. I don't need to enumerate here. There have been some infrastructure improvements over the last decade. When you're heading eastbound, you can exit Highway 20 prior to the roundabout and proceed to the south leg where there are lights to cross over. There's a separated paved path along Highway 20 to the north of the golf course that will take you to the intersection of Reservation Road, and you can hit the crosswalk button and cross there. I understand that is not the best option in the world, but it's the option that we have that's legal, and it is the safest way to travel east by bicycle right now. So I would encourage people to do that until we get something else figured out. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. And we will move on to item 3B. The Fiber Committee did meet, but I don't think any of the council members that were there are present this evening. So we can have them report next week's council meeting. Public Works Committee, which I know met, Ms. Moulton.
Mayor Miller, thank you. The Public Works Committee met just prior to this meeting, and it was Councilmember Young and myself along with staff members. And we had 3 items on our agenda today. One is an update on our outfall projects, which due to its complexity and the difficulty of getting everything permitted for the in-water and above ground work, we have missed the fish window for 2022. So that project is being pushed off until next year. We talked about the R Avenue improvements, the long-term plan for that area, and the decision to put a roundabout at 30th and R. And Mr. Homan in engineering gave us a really good description of why that decision was made. And part of it is to do with a $3.5 million grant from the federal government for freight mobility. And there are numerous reasons why that is preferred rather than 28th Street or 32nd Street. And we will have a presentation for Mr. Homan next Monday at council for council and the public. So we'll be looking forward to that. And then we had a reminder that this coming Saturday, September 10th, is free garbage day for Anacortes residents from 9 to noon. And I think you might need to bring proof of your residency, like a utility bill, 2 proofs of residency. So make sure you bring those, and yeah, free garbage. So thanks.
Wow, thank you for that reminder. I'm usually good on catching that one. That's a big day, so. All right, thank you for that report. All right, and the museum committee,
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Carter.
So we met, it was a while ago, but just as a reminder, the museum is open to all, especially classrooms, any teachers that want to take their classes down to tour the museum. Also, the museum is adding QR codes to different park signs and murals around town for anyone that wants a more in-depth explanation of the historic value of the site. And the museum has also scanned in the Anacortes American newspaper dating back to 1890 to present. So those are all available online for anyone that wants to go look at what the community was like over 100 years ago. And their social media presence is increasing. They are digitalizing photos and getting their YouTube channel, adding more stories online. Just having more of a online social presence, making it easier and accessible for everyone to get on. The Maritime Heritage Center is going to be staying open year round, and the WT Preston won't be staying open year round due to maintenance that they have to continue to do and upgrades. So that will not stay open year round. It'll be seasonal. And I believe that is it.
Okay, thanks. 3E is Parks and Recreation Committee report.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
Thank you. Parks and Rec Committee met on August 23rd, so it's been a while. Myself were there along with staff. Couple of updates around the skate park. Skate park is moving along as planned, so the community is super excited about that. Got a quick update about the A Town is Our Town newsletter, which I know I've been missing in my mailbox. It's being worked in-house, and we are planning to see it hopefully in a couple of weeks, maybe mid-September. So it'll be slimmed down from some of our previous offerings, but it'll still be full of really good information. Getting geared up for soccer season, largest youth sport in the community. They're doing their badminton program, pickleball, all sorts of good stuff in the sports programs are happening. Got an update from Nicole about the cemetery. It's an interesting little tidbit, but we have sold our first plot in the new addition. So, you know, phase 2 is almost officially closed. Roads have been paved. It looks really good. We want to give a big thank you to the street department. One of the things that we've heard tonight is that all of our departments are working together really, really well. So between parks and streets, that's fantastic. Also gave an update on the senior center. Mr. Harris, who was recognized at our previous meeting, has been doing a lot of work there. There was a vaccination clinic mid-July and about 40 people got their vaccinations. They're looking to do another one in October.
All right, next Public Safety Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
Me too. Okay, we had our meeting earlier today. Council member Cleland McGrath and Carter joined me with staff. We discussed the trestle fire, as y'all have seen with the presentation earlier. The police are working on recruiting staff in a records position. There's a retirement that's coming up at the end of the year, and this is a very unique position. There's a lot of reporting that has to go back to state and federal governments. So this is an important position. They are also working on officer recruiting. There's an event out in another location, so that'll be happening at the end of the month. Getting ready for Oyster Run. As Mayor Miller indicated, there's a lot of youth and a lot more traffic on the road. There's also going to be a lot more traffic in a couple of weekends when Oyster Run comes into town. So they are increasing patrol to watch out for unsafe driving. So we want to let our citizens here know to kind of watch out for that as well, regardless of whether you're participating or if you're out and about in town. Please watch out for motorcycles. Also want to give an update from Fire EMS. Station 3 feasibility study is coming along. FEMA will be here soon to give a presentation to council around an EOC drill. And we are looking at the ladder truck now delivering in December of 2023. And there are still conversations happening around where the antique fire truck will go. We will be working on updating our CFP.
All right, thank you. And one more committee report that I'm aware of, Port City Liaison Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. The Port City Liaison Committee met this morning. It was Mayor Miller, Mr. Miesemer, Mr. Hash, and myself, as well as Mr. Wara, Commissioner Kathy Pettis, and Commissioner Petrus from the port. And we discussed two major items, but I think one of them is on the agenda for next week, which is the North Basin and that agenda and developments that's taken place there. So much of our discussion of that was curbed a bit to next week because it'll come before council. A major discussion was the TDOC and a study that came out about TDOC and its effect on the economics development for our city. I think the revenues were estimated around $14 million in economic development that happens along the dock. The challenge is which is south of Anthony's. The challenge is that it's aged, the weight, and there's some modifications that they're considering updating and upgrading part of that. And they're going to try for some state and federal funds. At least 6 tribes and commercial tribes also use the dock. Commercial fishermen use the dock. So it's a big impact on our area and what we do as a city and the revenues that we are generating. So part of that is they're looking to do an upgrade, almost, I do believe, Mayor, something nearing about doubling the size or the capacity. But the good news is that they are working with Olympia to try to find resources as well as our legislators to see if there are other dollars that are out there. As far as the Tommy Thompson Trail and the fire, the port indicated that they passed a resolution to support the rebuild of the Tommy Thompson Trail. We had a bit of a conversation about economic development from the standpoint of what's happening at MJB, what we know, and trying to look as both the city and the port at how we can help that process along to make sure that it works for our city. So part of that, and then also we had a brief discussion about progressing on the conversation of affordable housing and the Island Inn as it moves forward, its request or its desire to sort of try to make those Island Inns to an affordable housing spot. So there was some news on that, and permits are next, and those things are being worked through. The port has got several things coming up. They're looking at what they may do with the Rockwell property, which is a property near the airport that they acquired. They're just sort of beginning to take a harder look at that. Our next meeting will be on October 4th at the city, and we will host. And that's all I have on that. Mayor, if I might,
I think the only add that the T dock, it's an older dock and
Yeah.
the capacity, it's the weight for the trucks that's the challenge. And they do a lot of, and there's a lot of economic activity. No surprise, Dungeness and shrimp, I think, were at the top of the list of
yeah,
the stuff
and
that,
some gooey duck, I
yeah.
understand too.
But at the top of the list were Dungeness and shrimp, which makes me hungry.
Mayor, I have one other
Okay.
report that didn't come in.
Okay.
It was the Economic
Oh,
Development Committee.
sorry about
Yeah.
that. Yep.
No, it wasn't on the agenda.
And,
So
and
thank
then
you.
just one more on the
Okay.
Port City, that we'll be talking about it later on the utility easement. So, yeah, and now I will let you do your Economic Development Committee report.
Thank you, Mayor. We had an Economic Development Committee meeting this morning at 11 o'clock. Again, it's a new committee for the city, but our focus is clear on economic development, looking at how we as a city approach economic development. What are those things that we are interested in? What are those things that we have that we can augment, those things that are missing? And how do we work with all of the partners here and stakeholders, as well as our work to integrate that into the workings of Skagit and the surrounding areas. So there at that meeting was Ms. Hubick, as well as Ms. Cleland McGrath. One of the things that we had there was, of course, the mayor was there, but it was John Sternlick, CEO of the Economic Development Alliance, as well as Aaron. I can't think of Aaron's last name, but Aaron was there from the Economic Development Alliance. And what we really did was begin to look at what structure we wanted as a committee, meaning, the core group, of course, is the city itself, and us looking at those things that we understand are of interest to us, and then going to the core groups of people such as the port, the chamber, and others, and then also within that, steering committees of all of the issues that we have coming forward, whether that's healthcare and the challenges at Island Hospital, trying to get more doctors and nurses given the climate that we're in, or whether it's availability, infrastructure, diversity, small business support resources, finance, agricultural opportunities. All those things affect us in a big way. And so what we began to wrestle in the broad brush was, these are some of the issues and a beginning point for us to look at what we're doing, how we can help that. Lots of places are looking for workers now. And just as a precursor to that, what I did was looked at the Economic Development Alliance's website, and they had nearly 2,000 jobs that were up. But when I put the geographic location as Anacortes, it dropped to 54. And then many of those had specific job requirements that wouldn't just be for the average person, I think. And so those are things that we needed to look at and figure out how we can augment that, support the businesses that are here. Part of the conversation is EDAS, as well as with the mayor, we were talking about how do we help those businesses that are here grow and also provide the services that they need. So I'm saying all that to say to you that we're looking at it from a holistic standpoint. We're still defining how and what that will be. Our hope is that we've got some timelines that we're beginning to come to group issues together to make eating this big elephant, if you would, palatable in a way that allows for our success. And so it was a wonderful meeting. Mayor, again, we've had many conversations about it. And so anybody on the committee, if you want to add something, Amanda, okay. Well, but the good news is that the belief is that the committee itself will be working with the stakeholders and trying to find those roles. Primary function of the committee, however, is from the legislative side, looking at how we help the city, and then how in partnership with all of those stakeholders, figure out a solution that works. Is Ms. Cleveland McGrath, is that you chirping?
Yeah, sorry.
Did you,
I'm not at home and I could see you as you started the meeting,
great.
but I could not hear you. So I apologize for, I heard, I got in about the time where you were doing the Tommy Thompson trestle update.
Did you want to add on to the
Yeah.
committee report?
Yeah,
Please,
I
go
just
ahead.
think that that we really want to do kind of a holistic understanding of the economy and how do we support it? How do we not kind of duplicate current efforts, and really try to figure out a way that we talk to the folks who already have skin in the game and are business owners and employees, and how do we listen to them to figure out what we can do? And it may be that we do some advocacy when it comes to improvements, land wise, right? And connection. So we want to keep it really open, but the big thing is this was a very preliminary meeting. And so there was just a handful of folks there, and we are just starting to talk about who should be included in all those committees and represent. So if you're interested, reach out to us, but we are just starting that process. So there were a lot of folks that were missing that should be at the table there.
All right. Any other announcements, committee reports that I may have missed?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. McDougall?
Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, Mr. McDougall, there you are. Sorry, had to
Yeah.
find you on my screen.
Oh, good. I just wanted to mention, I also joined late, had an appointment run long. I came in for, I think, most of Mr. Young's port update. So,
Okay.
that's
All
all
right.
I have. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And all right, I'm going to move on to item 4. This is an opportunity to address the council on anything that's not on our agenda. If anybody here or I show one attendee online. All right, we're moving on to item 5, which is our consent agenda, items A through B. Council,
Mayor Miller,
Ms. Moulton.
I move to approve agenda items 5A and 5B.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Mr. Carter to approve consent agenda items A and B. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. On to other business, item 6. We'll start with item 6A, resolution 3097, declaring certain retained utility easements to be surplus in favor of the Port of Anacortes. It's a discussion item with possible action. Ms. Swetnam will be doing the presentation. Ms. Swetnam.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A little bit of technology to work with here. So tonight, back before you is the second read on Resolution 3097, which we talked about at the August 22nd council meeting. And so to recap, this is an easement by which the city would declare certain retained utility easements to be surplus to the needs of the city. And so since last time's discussion, I had a chat with Brad Tesh, who's in the audience. He's the project manager for the port for the North Basin redevelopment project. And we talked a little bit about some of the good points that council raised last time. So some changes that are integrated into the updated draft of the resolution in your packet are, first of all, a requirement that the port grant within 60 days of the adoption of the resolution an easement in favor of the city for the existing water lines that run across the port's property, but for which the city does not yet have an easement. I talked to Mr. Tesh about the timing of that. That's going to have to go to the Ports Commission, and so that allows enough time for that to work through the process. I also made some changes to the document. Thank you, Councilmember Moulton, for suggesting that we do a better job of explaining the reason why the relinquishment is
in the city's best interest to do. And that was a reference to the fact that one, will be getting the water line easements relinquished. Two, it allows the port to move forward with the funding that they've been awarded, but not yet gotten final approval for under an RCO grant. And then finally, I put in there that this relinquishment of these easements was referenced in the conditional use permit that the port got for the RV park that they're planning. And finally, I apologize again for the duplicate recital, but that's been cleaned up in the final version of the packet. So just to show you again the map, it's this area in yellow that's got the bold outline. And that is a footprint of an old vacated city right-of-way that was vacated back in 1956, and the city retained a water or a utility easement, but there's no infrastructure there. So at this point, staff is recommending adoption of the resolution, but I am happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure that Mr. Tush is willing to answer questions for the port as well.
All right, and this is open to public comment, so I'll real quick make sure are any attendees here or online wish to comment on this. All right, and I know some members of council interested in commenting. Questions for Ms. Swetnam?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young?
No, I really, again, Ms. Swetnam, I always appreciate when we have a discussion that there's a visual in front so that you have a great reference point. So thank you for that. You know, this is clearly something that I think is in everyone's best interest at this point, you know, because not only does it allow the North Basin development to move forward, which has been on the port's agenda for quite a while, and I'm excited about that, but it also addresses our need for the future, the waterline easement that we would need to be able to address. So it is a win-win for both not only the city and the port, but for all of the citizens of our city. So, you know, I'm very much in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or motions perhaps?
Mayor Miller,
Mr. Young?
forgive me for not having the exact wording of the motion in front of me. Normally I do.
You can just
Okay,
resolution.
there it is. All right, thank you, Mayor. Oh, okay. I make a motion that we approve resolution 3097. I move we adopt resolution 3097, declaring certain retained utility easements to be surplus to the needs of the city and direct the mayor to execute the relinquishment of retained utility easements.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Young, a second by Ms. Hubick. Mr. Franciac, would you take a vote, please?
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath,
Yes.
Ms. Moulton,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Ms. Hubick,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, thank you. We are on to item 6B, opioid settlement agreement. This is a discussion with possible action, and Ms. Swetnam, still you are up.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry you get to listen to me again, but there is a lot of material in the packet for tonight that gives you all an update on the one piece of the many components that comprise the litigation involving opioid manufacturers in the United States. So I thought rather than making my own PowerPoint presentation, I would borrow the one that the State Attorney General's office did such a nice job putting together. The mayor and I attended this presentation on August 8th, and it was really directed towards local agencies in Washington State to explain what our role is in helping carry out the terms of the settlement agreement between the state of Washington and 3 of the opioid manufacturers. So I'll send this PDF, not PowerPoint. So you'll have to watch me scroll here. But so essentially the Attorney General's office lawsuit against the distributors involved are Amerisource, Bergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. And the lawsuit alleges a number of complaints, including nuisance and consumer protection claims. They all have the kind of the flavor of the fact that these opioid distributors knowingly convinced prescribers to overprescribe opioids, which has contributed in an actionable way to the opioid epidemic in the United States. So as you can imagine, in a lawsuit with this scope, there's a ton of documents and data that have been exchanged throughout the discovery process. And there was a 6-month trial in King County Superior Court. The case was settled at the close of evidence, so it didn't go to a jury. And the settlement provided up to $518 million payable over 17 years. So the settlement also required that $430 million of that must be spent on combating the opioid epidemic. And the Attorney General is directing an additional $46 million in attorney's fees to the opioid spending by the state. And then the remainder is the attorney's fees for the local agencies, including our attorneys. So the settlement is interesting because it requires, in order for it to be effective, 125 local governments listed in the settlement have to join and participate. There are 37 local jurisdictions in Washington state that have joined this lawsuit. They must all join. And then 90% of the local governments with a population over 10,000 that did not file a lawsuit have to also join. If it's 100%, then that would open up the full amount of the settlement dollars. 90%, there'll be a reduction of the settlement amount. The idea behind that is that if those other 10% or any of those other 10% decided to separately file suit, they wouldn't be able to then double dip and recover under a separate suit and also participate in the settlement. So nationally, I'm sure you've heard of this, but there are settlements. There's sort of a global settlement that I believe 48 other states and local governments have joined. Washington state is the only one that decided not to approve that global settlement. And the good news is that the settlement that Washington just reached is more favorable than what we would have received had we joined the global settlement. So, that says something about the Washington State Attorney General's office for taking on that fight and doing the work to get us to this amount. So how we join the settlement, we have to sign and return the participation form that's in the packet. We have to do that by September 23rd. And if not enough cities and counties join the settlement, then the settlement is void. And this is their PowerPoint presentation, not mine. No one gets any of the settlement money. So I think we've had a series of meetings with the Attorney General's office, with the attorneys that are representing the class in this. And I think this is kind of a time frame where a lot of local agencies are taking the settlement agreement to their respective boards and councils for approval. So I think that was all I was going to go through. There's a number. Oh, I wanted to go touch on this slide too. So in addition to the settlement between the state attorney general's office and the defendants in the lawsuit, there's also been a lot of work happening between the city's attorney who represents the other 37 or 36 agencies in Washington state that have filed suit to determine how the money is going to be split between the state and the local agencies. And the split is 50-50 at this point. So half of that money will be used by the state of Washington to deal with opioid on a state level. And then the other half will be distributed amongst the agencies that have joined the class. And so I put on my, actually did bad math. I apologize. That's why Mayor doesn't let me do math very often, but I put in the white paper that the city will receive 380,000 over 17 years is actually 324,000. And so that will be, I think the first year we'll get double what the rest of the years are. So like, I think year one, the city will get 36,000. Every year after that, it will be 18,000. So at this point, the recommendation to the city and my recommendation then to all of you is that we move forward with this settlement agreement. This is not the type of case that the city has the bandwidth to take on our own. And so we are grateful to the AG's office and our outside counsel attorneys for fighting for the settlement amount. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
And a little history reminder, we did join the lawsuit and I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe.
It's been a couple of years. Yeah.
And now this is the result of certainly part of it. And yeah, I think now it's just we're determining whether we want to accept the settlement, and I think it makes sense. And I think I probably just need a vote out of the council for me to authorize, me to authorize a signature. So. But
Yeah.
any questions for Mr. Carter and then Ms. Moulton, I think. Oh, no, it wasn't you.
Is there any downside to doing it? Like if it doesn't go as planned?
Yeah, so the consideration for receiving the money is the dismissal of our claims. So, so at this point, if the city participates, we will lose the ability to continue legal action against these 3 distributors. There are other distributors and there are other cases out there that we can participate in, but that's really the consideration, is that we wouldn't continue to pursue those claims.
I just remember from the time on council when we were looking to do this, I went over with the mayor at the time because I was skeptical of joining the lawsuit, and like, you know what, if we could get either funding to pay for our drug dog or for Narcan, I think it would be worthwhile to participate in. I think that probably if the pilot and the attorney math worked out right, then I think it's enough to cover those. So,
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland.
Hey, so I should have prepped Ms. Swetnam for this question, but are there any other cities who participated in this within Skagit County that would be
Yes.
worth kind of like, I don't know if it's even a discussion, but do we want to pool resources for or look at what our options are once we receive those funds?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councilmember Cleland McGrath. Yes, there are other agencies in Skagit County, including Skagit County itself. I believe the city of Mount Vernon, city of Burlington. I know Cedar Woolley School District, if not the city as well. And when the city joined the lawsuit, there was discussion. I cannot remember if there was an agreement, but I'm happy to look into that and email council and the mayor and supplement the packet with that information. But I believe there was some agreement that we would in fact pool resources to deal with this issue on a county, as a county is sort of a united front.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And half of at least when I read through the Attorney General, the packet that we provided council, there's 20 some pages on what you can spend it on. So there's a lot of, there's strings attached, and certainly, yes, we will look to partner the most effective way. My example wasn't the solution. It was just an example. So absolutely.
Which is better than most people do in most class action lawsuits. So.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Carter.
There's no other discussion or questions, then I move that we authorize the mayor to execute the distributor settlement agreement on behalf of the city of Anacortes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Carter, second by Mr. Young to authorize the mayor to sign the settlement agreement. I think, Mr. Franciac, we should take a vote on this one.
Ms. Cleland McGrath,
Yes.
Ms. Moulton,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Ms. Hubick,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Young. Yes. Motion carries.
All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. And before I adjourn the meeting, I looked at all the committee reports and I'm like, hey, appreciate the work council's doing. That's a lot. That were quality reports and can't do the work of the city without doing all that work in committee. So appreciate that. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.